about those brothers, I kind of, the way that they treat David, they remind me of Joseph's brothers. They're irritated with little brother.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
They're like, why are you here?
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I know why you're here. You're acting like you're all goody, but I know why you're here. You're wanting to, my grandmother, my mom's mom used to say, show out. You're just up here to show out. You want your opportunity. Hey, this is my day. The older brothers were saying.
Jealousy, and you can see it in what they say to him.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
If you don't know the story, we know the story. But if you don't know it, David, if you think about David, number one, he's the youngest. Number two, probably, I would say, the least qualified.
Yeah.
They go to battle, much less to take on Goliath.
Right.
So they're like, you can go home and shepherd the sheep and do the things boys do. Let the men take care of the battle.
Right. Which goes into the narrative, by the way. That really makes me wonder about David's motivation with the phrases that he uses. Because he says to Goliath, you come at me with the sword, you come up with battle things, and I come against you in the name of the Lord. So he might be kind of saying that to his brothers too. Never thought about that. I appreciate you saying that.
Well, the reason it sounds to me like the Joseph and the brothers thing too is you look at somebody that's godly and they can tell that David is. He talks about God a lot. It's like they see him also as a goody two shoes,
Yeah.
And they're irritated by that.
Yeah, that happens even to this day. If you're not careful, just being good, just imitating Christ, you can get on folks' nerves. And that's not new. Not to be discouraged. You see that David didn't let it discourage him. You just keep on imitating the Father. Keep doing what's right and don't worry about other people. If what you're genuinely doing is trying to please God himself. All right, so the next thing is, hesitate to even bring it up because I'm sure nobody's got an answer for this. I sure hope all 12 of you do. The ESV says that Jesse says, see if your brothers are well and bring some token from them. I don't even know if you noticed that. For some reason that just jumps off the page. Basically, the principle of it is check on your brothers and make sure they're okay. But he wants David to, it appears in the Hebrew language, to bring back proof. Not just
a little note from him or something.
Yeah, something like that, exactly. Not just do what you might do, come back and tell your parents, oh, everything's fine, when things are not really fine. Jesse wants to know for a fact. So it doesn't say exactly what the token is, but it's pretty simple. I think that's a good enough answer. I don't know what they would write on. It's not like you have a Post-it note. Obviously, he's not going to text Dad. It's just somehow get some sort of bona fide proof that your brothers are alive. To me, it seems like why wouldn't he take David's word for it? Kind of odd. Yes.
Well, then I would think it doesn't necessarily need to be a written note or anything. It could be some little possession they got.
Could be.
Carried into battle with them.
And what would they do? They would give that to David?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or maybe, this is, if you want my outside chance guess, when David kills Goliath, he does two different things. Not to be gruesome, but that's what the text says. He cuts off his head and carries that head around with him. And what's the other thing he does? He takes Goliath's armor and puts it in his tent.
proof.
Exactly, bona fide, right? So, maybe the brothers are supposed to give war trophies, 3 of them, to Jesse through David. I don't know. Like I said, it's an outside guess. Just kind of weird, that's all. Yes?
That doesn't necessarily prove their safety, it just proves that they would kill Goliath. But he was wanting something for the brother's safety. You know what I mean?
Right.
Different versions say different things.
Right.
One says news.
News.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, it was just something that struck me and I wanted to talk about it while we had a second. All right.
It makes you wonder how he got the armor to his head. Surely he didn't carry it.
Well, maybe, several
In the car,
trips.
somebody-
Yeah. Right. All right, so verse 19, Now Saul and they and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah, fighting with the Philistines. And David rose early in the morning and left the sheep with the keeper and took the provisions and went, as Jesse had commanded him. And he came to the encampment as the host was going out to the battle, out the battle line, shouting the war cry. And Israel and the Philistines drew up for battle, army against army. And David left the things in charge of the keeper of the baggage, and ran to the ranks, and went and greeted his brothers. As he talked with them, behold, the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, came out of the ranks of the Philistines and spoke the same words as before. And the Bible says, and David heard him. You might say, and this time David heard it. And all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him and were much afraid. And the men of Israel said, have you seen this man who has come up? Surely he has come up to defy Israel. And the king will enrich the man who killed him with great riches, and will give him his daughter and make his father's house free in Israel. And David said to the men who stood by him, what shall be done for the man who kills this Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God? And the people answered him in the same way, so shall it be done to the man who kills him. Now Eliab, his eldest brother, heard when he spoke to the men. And Eliab's anger was kindled against David, and he said, why have you come down? And with whom have you left those few sheep in the wilderness? Shouldn't you be watching some sheep? I know your presumption and the evil of your heart. Odd, right? God loves David. Why? Especially at this age. Because David's a man after God's own heart. What does his brothers accuse? Evil heart. Irony. For you have come down to see the battle. And David said, what have I done now? What is not but a word? And he turned away from him toward another and spoke in the same way. And the people answered him again as before. When the words that David spoke were heard, they repeated them before Saul, and he sent for him. And David said to Saul, let no man's heart fail because of him. Your servant will go and fight with this Philistine. And Saul said to David, you are not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for you are but a youth, and he has been a man of war from his youth. But David said to Saul, your servant used to keep sheep for his father. And when there came a lion or a bear and took a lamb from the flock, I went after him and struck him and delivered him out of his mouth. And if he arose against me, I caught him by his beard and struck him and killed him. Your servant has struck down both lions and bears, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be like one of them, for he has defied the armies of the living God. And David said, the Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine. And Saul said to David, "Go, and the Lord be with you." All right, so David, by the way, knows that he's the anointed of God. And if Jesse's been doing his job, and I believe he is, David knows about the anointed of God. And I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. He knows that. He also knows that God has, in the past, more than once, made an example out of anybody who would speak against the God of Israel. And that's exactly what he hears Goliath do. So when you think about David's mentality, what he's going through, why he's not afraid, why he's not only not afraid, but he's like seeing a super opportunity here. Because he knows his God. This guy is out in public speaking against the God of Israel. You know what's going to happen next. God's going to make an example out of it. And of course, you know the story. That's what happens. Doesn't matter how big he is. Does not matter. Speaking of how big he is, verse 4, as we just read, says that he was 6 cubits in a span. As was discussed last week, that's 9.5 feet tall, which is signified by, is this off? Everything's off tonight. Okay. Right here, that's 9.5 feet tall. Briefly mentioned last class was Robert Wadlow, the Alton giant. He was an American man known for being the tallest person in recorded history for whom there is irrefutable evidence. Wadlow was born and raised in Alton, Illinois, a small city near St. Louis, Missouri. Wadlow's height was 8 foot 11 inches. So that's 9'6". Wadlow was about that tall. As you can see, here's the doorway. There next to a car. That's not that long. He died in 1940. Unfortunately for him, the NBA started in 1946. He could have just thrown the ball, drop, throw the ball, drop. Just a weird thing. Very, very tall man. This is him as a boy. Just an amazing thing. As I said to Tracy, he had a abnormality about him. No off position on the growth switch. He just kept growing. It's very dangerous to do so, obviously. But nevertheless, when you think about Goliath, it's not impossible for somebody to be 9 foot 6 inches. We know for a fact. You can go to the museum, you can see this man's shoes. It was not a myth. Yes.
What was odd was his brothers and how big, how big they were reported too. This is just an abnormality with him.
Yeah.
You got the whole family. It's
Yeah.
like, it's just monsters over there.
Sure. Yeah.
Was he normal when he was born? Did it say how big a baby?
Yeah, he was just a normal sized baby. I forget what it was, 8 pounds something. Yeah. But he just kept growing. He started growing really early and just kept growing and growing and growing. So, all right, let's get into some of these questions here. And let's focus on the 1 through 5 here and understand. Did you, when you look at the lesson, did you understand what the pseudo-philo is? What is that? Number 1, pseudo-philo. What's that? Speculative legend is the pseudo-philo. The pseudo-philo, written about 2,000 years ago, is a story, basically. It's just a story where, like Hollywood does, they take a true story and they decide they're going to make a movie about it because it's so spectacular. But then they start making the movie and they find it to where, well, it'd be easier if we said it was this and not that. So basically, that's what the pseudo-philo is. It's a speculative legend, a document that's very, very old, but not inspired by God. All right, number 2, Tel Es Safi. First of all, what is a tel? It's an archaeological term for a mound. That's right. Hebrew word tel, T-E-L, mound, meaning there's something there, but it's covered up, obviously, by time. So Tel Es Safi is the Tel of Gath, the mound in the ground that used to be the city where Goliath is from. What's Eglon? Lego my Eglon. Moabite king. That's right. What is number 4? 4Q Sam A. A Dead Sea Scroll. What's the difference between a scroll and a Dead Sea Scroll?
What's the difference between what?
A scroll and a Dead Sea Scroll.
Scroll can be anything. Dead Sea Scroll is manuscripts of the scriptures.
Well, there were a lot of things that weren't scripture.
Right.
They found these scrolls, as I know what you're trying to get to, and I'm cutting you off, is these scrolls in a cave near the Dead Sea. Right. So, one of the scrolls that they found in the Dead Sea Scrolls is 4Q Sam A. 4Q Sam A, that scroll had Goliath at only 6.5 feet, or something like that. It's 4 cubits instead of 6 cubits. Anyway, so the question is why? What's the difference? Well, we have thousands of ancient manuscripts, and some of them say that Goliath was 6 cubits in a span, and some of them say that he was 4 cubits in a span. So was he about 9.5 feet, or was he about 6 feet? Which is it? Well, on page 66 of your lesson, in that first paragraph, is it the first paragraph?
Yep.
Yeah, at the bottom of the first paragraph, you'll see that the word for 4 and the word for 6, the Hebrew little jot, is why some manuscripts say 6 and some say 4. Because if you really look at those little letters, it's hard to know for a fact. But what you do is you look at a majority of old manuscripts, and you look at the rest of the text, and then you come to an educated understanding. And if you do that, you'll see that it's clear that he was 6 cubits in a span. Yes.
It occurs to me that if he was closer to 6 feet, so was Saul. He wouldn't have been that much taller than Saul.
Very good. That reminds me, and I think that's what Rand was saying last week. Yeah. So the text itself will tell you that he couldn't have been just 6 feet, because it wouldn't have scared Saul like he did. He had Saul shaking in his sandals.
Not only that, if it was 6 feet, you look at all the other things that it described about his sword and everything else around it.
Right.
What big deal, he was 6 inches taller than everybody else? No, he was much bigger than everybody else.
Exactly. Yeah, and stronger, obviously, because his armor was so heavy. So this gives you an insight of when you take ancient manuscripts, and they are ancient, and they're rolled up, and they were written thousands of years ago, and you're trying your best to change them to English. And for the most part, 99.9% of the words are easy to figure out. But every once in a while, like in this case where it looks like an upside down L or a fat upside down L, and you're like, I don't know. So the main thing to understand is the text is the king. The text will tell you if there's anything where you're not exactly sure. The text will help you understand. Context, context, context. Yes, sir.
And I would also say whether he was X amount of height than the other height, it's still, there was a Goliath, and David killed him by God's power.
Right. The main
It
important.
still happened.
Right, exactly. Yeah, the most important thing to understand is not changed.
Isn't he kind of descended from the Nephilim too?
Well, that's along the stories. Again, we don't know exactly about
His
everything.
brothers were tall, maybe, that's what history might say, or not history, but whatever it is.
I mean, this is long after the flood, and some would say they didn't make it through the flood, some would say they did. I mean, it's Noah's family that made it through the flood, so I don't think so. But I think of it more like Wadlow, because it's an anomaly. And it was 5 of them, but nevertheless, it can happen and then not happen again. It's just crazy way DNA can work. Okay, so number 5 was the last one. Of course, that's an archaeologist. He's a professor at a university in Israel. Okay. How long did the Philistines oppress the land of Israel? Question?
In the third paragraph on page 67,
Pseudo-philo, what about it?
I believe it's 25 to 78 years.
Yes.
And it has some major variation in the biblical.
Right.
Who is it?
Okay, so that's what we were talking about earlier, the pseudo-philo. This right here is a speculative legend. And on the page you're looking at, 67, I started, because one of the questions is, what's the difference between the biblical story and the pseudo-philo? And I started highlighting in yellow, and I started realizing that the differences are going to be so much, the whole thing's going to be yellow. So what I did, if you can see up here, pink is the only thing it has in agreement with the story that we just read in Samuel 17. So pseudo-philo is like a Hollywood script. And it's so many different things than the real story. And by the way, it's just, to me, it's amazing because it's already interesting. You don't need to add other stuff to this story. But in the arena of ancient documents, pseudo-philo is a famous document. But irrelevant to you and I because we're Bible students. We care about what's actually inspired by God. Okay. How long did the Philistines oppress the land of Israel? 40 years. God let them do that. He could have done it 38 years, but it was 40. Why? Because God uses the number 40 as a symbolic number. I don't doubt for one second that it was actually 40 years, but it was 40 years because God eventually said, okay, now I'm going to show you how to be delivered. Now it's been long enough. How often did Goliath challenge the army? All of the above. Very good. Where did the battle with the Philistines take place? Armageddon? Gehenna? No. The Valley of Elah. Who was Saul's chief military officer? Abner. Very good. Major player in this story in the book of 1 Samuel. And the last one who is named in this lesson as Goliath's brother, Lamai. Which, by the way, 1 Chronicles 20 and verse 5 says there was again war with the Philistines, and Elhanan, the son of Jair, struck down Lamai, the brother of Goliath the Gittite. The shaft was of whose spear was like a weaver's beam. So Lamai was a giant who was a brother of Goliath. Gittite means from the city of Gath. So depending on your English translation, it may or may not say the brother of. But context is here's another time where context will tell you that it couldn't be Goliath of Gath. It has to be the brother of Goliath. And of course, if you look at the whole text, you can see all this. We don't have enough time for that. But it is clear when you line up 2 Samuel 21 with 1 Chronicles 20, you can see who's who and what's what. All right, which manuscripts favor the 9 feet height of Goliath? Which manuscripts favor the 6 foot version of Goliath? Do you know how to simply say that? Which group of manuscripts say he was about 6 foot? What, the Philo-Pseudo? Yes, the Dead Sea Scrolls, including the Philo-Pseudo. Interestingly enough, about the manuscripts that we got from those caves, for whatever reason, their version had him at 6 cubits. All right. Give some reasons to think.
So which ones had him at 9 feet?
Which ones have him at 9 feet? All right, these are the Masoretic texts. So forever, all we had was the Masoretic Old Testament. But they were not written, the copies that we had, there was 1,000 years between Jesus and those copies. Then we found the Dead Sea Scrolls, and they were physically older. So we were, and still are, super excited that we found those Dead Sea Scrolls, but for whatever reason, the Dead Sea Scrolls had Goliath, oddly, at 6 feet tall. But the Masoretic text, and by the way, the Septuagint, who knows what the Septuagint is?
Septuagint is the Hebrew Bible that's been translated into the Greek.
That's right. So Ptolemy had for the famous Alexandrian library. Said, oh, you guys really like this Hebrew so-called Bible, do you? Give me one in Greek and I'll put it in my library. That's the Septuagint. It had him at 9 feet. All right. Explain the seeming conflict concerning the one who actually slew Goliath. Again, we talked about that as far as it was actually the brother of Goliath. Number 14. About how much did Goliath's armor weigh in our common measurements? Roughly how many pounds?
400 to 500 pounds.
What's that?
400 to 500 pounds.
400 to 500? I had 150. 160 pounds.
Goliath?
Yeah. His weight of armor.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant his weight.
Okay. Number 15. What is the Lydian name associated with the name Goliath? I don't know what consequence this is, but it's Aliatus. What is the length of Goliath, the lineage of Goliath from the Moabites in the Babylonian Talmud? Again, this is the Hollywood version. Well, who's he supposed to be related to? Goliath. Not according to the Bible, not according to the truth. Orpah, that's right. Ruth's sister. Number 17, identify variations between the biblical record and the pseudo-philo account. Again, that's page 67, and most of it is not true. That which is pink is the same. Yes?
Ruth's sister or sister-in-law?
You're right, sister-in-law. Thank you very much.
Well,
That's right.
sisters, both.
I said that wrong.
They were sisters who married brothers, is what some people say.
They were sisters that married brothers? Okay. I have to look that up.
Greg, do you know what Jewish people, like let's say today, believe about life? Do they look at 6 foot or 9 foot, or is there a mix of Jewish people today? Or do they teach?
What people?
Jewish people.
Oh, Jewish people today?
Yeah. Do you have any idea?
I have no idea.
Which one do they gravitate towards, like the giant or the 6 foot guy?
I don't know, but I know that they love the Talmud, and the Talmud would tell them that he was 6 feet.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't understand, looking at it like we just talked about a minute ago, the context, even bringing up his brothers and how monstrous they were, you know what I mean? Like just the armor and how big he was, and, I don't see how anybody could believe that or see that,
Yeah, I know, but they hold the Talmud very sacred because it's written by rabbis. So they count that as or slightly beneath the scriptures for whatever reason.
Well, even if you didn't know how tall the Israelites were, you knew that Saul was head and shoulders taller.
Right,
So, like you said,
right. Average Israelite, Saul, and he's scared of this guy. So, context. Yeah. But, I mean, when you elevate the rabbis, and they did that in Jesus' time, they were amazed by the way Jesus taught as one having authority. Whereas everybody else at that time, and apparently still today, they pick a favorite teacher and they say, so-and-so rabbi said such and such. And Jesus told them, don't do that. Don't do that. All right. Let's see what else. What did David mean that the battle is the Lord's? How would you relate this belief to our circumstances today? Do I have any takers? What did he mean? What exactly does that mean?
The Lord is fighting the battle for David. David would not have been victorious without the Lord.
Okay. So both is happening at the same time? Because David's moving, he's gripping, he's
God's in control.
slinging. Did somebody say last week? I feel like, no, I might be repeating what we were saying last class. Somebody said something about that, now I remember that. Somebody said something about how
Insane.
it was you, that rock wouldn't have been so accurate.
It's kind of,
Oh, yeah, God, talking about the helmet.
his helmet was all covered his head except for one small little spot,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's similar, I think, to the ark, Noah's ark. It didn't have a, whatever you call it. It didn't have it.
No rudder, nothing.
So,
a driver.
well, it didn't have a driver or what to drive. It didn't have anything. It was just a box.
Steering wheel.
It was just what is that thing? The helm? What is that?
Steering wheel, rudder.
You know what Skipper lost control of in Gilligan's Island? Anyway, the ark was built without that. So the endurance of the great flood is the Lord's. Similar to that. Noah built it, but it would have sank without the Lord. It would have broken up in all that rough water. Anyway, so that's what that means. That doesn't mean that David did nothing. It just means that it looked like David was having the best day of his life, the most amazing ability, when really it was God making the power of it and the accuracy of it. And this, the Goliath was having his worst day all at the same time because of the smoothness of God. What can we learn about Goliath from the things he shouted to the Israelites? I touched on that a moment ago.
Ungodly.
Think godly?
Ungodly.
He was ungodly, so what should we be? Godly. Right? Obviously, we would never talk trash about God or God's people or God's business. Anything God's got going on, it must be great. Relate the lessons from Goliath's slayer to our situations today.
You know, it amazes me about David's confidence. Goliath had been, like you said, talking trash this whole time. He heard it, and he was like, why are y'all letting this happen?
Right.
He has so much confidence in God.
Right. Absolutely.
And whatever comes, God's got this,
I I think it was his faith in God.
I'm sorry, what?
His faith,
His faith in God. Yeah,
he knew God was with him.
yeah, he did. Yes?
Also, that means we can sit back and not do anything. We gotta do our part of knowing that God's gonna be with us.
That's right. That's right. He didn't do nothing. He was just doing what he does, and God was making it perfect. Same way when the scriptures are written. John writes real different than Matthew. But that was what looks like their best day. They wrote better than they ever wrote before. God was helping them be their absolute perfect best. That's inspiration. All right,
You
real
haven't really
quick.
said it, but I got notes here about it in my Bible, about the fact that David's a type
A type. Oh, really?
for Jesus. I mean, the victorious and the lowly and the humble.
Tremendous. It says that he took the Philistines' head and brought it to Jerusalem. Why? Tracy whispered that the place is called what?
Oh, Gotha.
Golgotha. They brought him to the place called Golgotha, which means place of the skull. I don't know that to be why David took the skull to Jerusalem, but it's kind of weird.
I think he took it there to put it on display. Or I know that he buried it, but
Yeah.
hey, this is.
He walked into Saul's tent with it. He was showing it off.
Could it have been a token?
Could it have been what?
A token.
A token. Ooh, yeah. Too literal.
And you know, Greg, I Googled it. If he was that big of a man, 9 foot, like when you read and understand, his head probably would have weighed between 35 and 50 pounds. I don't know if people pick up 50-pound kettlebell before and like try that's heavy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a heavy head.
It is.
Well, I was wondering about that too, about the fact that all of the groceries that David walked, 5 miles or 10 miles or whatever, to take, he wasn't just taking it to his brothers, he's taking, I mean, it didn't say he's got a donkey, it could be that he did, but he's strong in the movie, I see him as being strong, he can take down a bear and a lion.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't underestimate
He
it.
can carry a head, don't you think?
I mean, he's not a boy. He's a man, a young man. Yes.
Go back or go forward 2 screens. I saw one where it said he had 6 fingers.
His brother.
My brother.
His brother.
His brother had 6 fingers on each hand and 6
Oh.
toes on each hand. That was in Chronicles.
Yeah, one of the giants had 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes. Yeah. Yeah, there's a list
That was in Chronicles.
that talks about that.
You need more toes to support that height.
I guess so. Extra pinky toe for balance. All right, so I am blessed to be able to give the invitation talk tonight, so here I am. If we're ready to get that started, why not? All right. So, on this day in 1943, kind of a gruesome night with the severed heads in one time.
And heads off, bodies dropped.
A body was dropped in the ocean near the sleepy shores of Huelva, Spain, 1943. The man's ID looked like that. And it turns out it was the ID of a captain in the Royal Navy, the British Royal Navy, Martin Williams. So why would a body be dropped in in the water in 1943? Well, it was in the hope of outsmarting the Nazis. Right? This was Operation Mincemeat. Recently a movie came out. Operation Mincemeat got its start with a so-called Trout Memo. Well, what's a Trout Memo? It was likely written by British Naval Intelligence Department Assistant Ian Fleming. Ian Fleming may sound familiar because he's the guy that wrote James Bond. The so-called Trout Memo was a memo that detailed 54 schemes to trick the Nazis. One of the schemes became Operation Mincemeat, a plan to use an actual, recently deceased body dropped in the ocean near Spain. This body was dressed like a British officer carrying fake, top-secret information. That was the ID they put on his body. And they, to show that it was top secret, he was supposed to be flying a plane, and he had handcuffed to him a briefcase with very, very secret documents that the Nazis were never supposed to find. But actually they were supposed to find it. This information tricked Hitler into moving his troops away from Italy so that the Allies could take the country of Italy and Sicily with great ease. Had Hitler known, he would not have moved most of his troops and resources to Greece. So it was a really genius plan to make Hitler think that he accidentally found information that the Allies were going to attack Greece instead of the obvious choice, which was Sicily. He figures, I'm putting all my armies in Sicily, and then he gets this body that washed up on the shore of Spain. Turned out retaking Italy was a key move in winning World War II. But let me tell you of another use of the dead body. It was used to outsmart Satan and his children. 1 Corinthians chapter 2, starting in verse 7, says, But we impart a secret and hidden wisdom of God, which God decreed before the ages for our glory. None of the rulers of this age understood this, for if they had, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. But as it is written, what no eye has seen, nor ear heard, nor the heart of man imagined, what God has prepared for those who love him. What God did in what can be referred to as the plan of salvation, he allowed evil men to kill the Lord Jesus. The Lord's dead body was in the tomb for 3 days, almost as a decoy, but actually as a substitution. The Lord's death paid for the sin of everyone who believes and repents and confesses Jesus, is baptized, and remains faithful unto death. Then, much to Satan's surprise, Jesus rose again. Which is why we have Philippians chapter 2. And being found in human form, Jesus humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death of the cross. Therefore God has highly exalted him and bestowed on him the name that is above every name, so that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow, in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. Do you make that confession? I pray that you do. I pray that you are looking forward to the Lord's return and that you are excited